Oh, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Sound Travels. I am Pastor Dan Walker. I am so privileged to pastor the New Bethel Baptist Church in Framingham, Mass., where, dare I say it, God is doing amazing things. Well, this morning is going to be quite an interesting broadcast. It's either going to fly high, will it go around in circles, or will it fly high like a bird up in the sky? I'm hoping that my guest calls in. If he does, it ought to be interesting. I'm going to ask if Jamal, if you're still listening, if you would just hang on. If this gentleman calls in, I may need some assistance from you. So just stick around. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, this coming April 7th, Good Friday, we are attempting to pull together what we're calling a passion walk, followed immediately by the retelling of the 7 last words in the public square in downtown Framingham. So we're asking all people who wish to be a part of either the walk or the telling to give me a call, 781-367-1338. We still need preachers. 3 of the 4 words have been 3 of the 7 words have been taken. We still, the remaining 4 words are some good ones too. I mean, some of the goodies are still there. I would have thought that, actually all the esoteric ones have been taken as far as I'm concerned. I've been trying to get Pastor Hobbs to come out and do one, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's noon in Framingham, and the weather's going to be cold, and I don't know if he can get his visa together in time, so we'll see. Lawyers are expensive. To get him to leave Boston, he's got to have his paperwork, Let me see your ID. Oh, my goodness. It's been a while since we've done the telling of the 7 last words. Obviously, we have BC before COVID, and then we have AD after deliverance. So that's kind of where we're at. And that can also be used to describe one's life, BC before Christ and AD after deliverance. And the idea is that they're supposed to be different people. There's supposed to be a change between the two. I guess I'm getting to that stage where I've preached enough times that I can say I preached a message so and so on the subject. And to me, it always sounded like, well, if you preached it once, why are you bringing it back up? But then again, I'm in that stage now. I'm in that category now. So, yeah. I understand why people say that. So, in the meantime, I can say this. I was, in my advertising for the 7 last words, I did something I rarely do, which is I boosted the post on Facebook. The reason I stopped boosting posts in general was because I found out that they were going to places where where the people were just texting me back and they were flaming and they were just like, don't put your nonsense on my post. I'm not interested in your false god or in your this, that, and the other. So I felt like, why am I spending money to annoy people? I don't need to do that. I would just assume people. So I actually text the last person that said that to me. I texted him back, keep your hate to yourself. And then somebody said, well, better yet, just turn your hate into love and move on. So it's just, if you don't agree as I agree, that's okay. You don't have to try and make my life miserable. You should understand the algorithms that Facebook uses. So, in that, it went out, and this gentleman called me back, or this gentleman texted me. He said, let's see, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at his post. This was last Wednesday after the broadcast. Blessedness, happy, wonderful Wednesday, and his texts are all in caps. Which, okay. My question is: do you know the differences between Christ, Christ Jesus, and Jesus Christ? If so, would you please be kind to explain? Thank you. So I texted him and I said, good morning, okay. Call me at 781-367-1338. So he did. And we talked for, 15, 20 minutes. And I thought to myself, this gentleman could be a really interesting gift. So a really interesting guest. He has a point of view, and if he's willing to share it, that'll be good. I could read his text to you, but I'm not sure about if I would give them the credit they deserve, because I don't understand some of which he wrote. I don't understand. So he's in St. Louis, Missouri, not Minneapolis. I'm sorry. I had told my producer. So one of the texts is the picture that he sent me of Satan holding his son, the little beast, Jesus Christ. The first Christians was all beasts, not human beings. The beast, Jesus Christ, was before Christ. Jesus, Mary's son, which he only was on earth. For 33 years, a young man, he only preached to the Jews for 3 years the gospel of unity, straight way to, I'm assuming he's trying to say straight way to heaven, but there's just some dots on it, so I don't know really what he was trying to say. Almighty Allah, God himself, the creator of all creations, he is the only one that is Lord of both the two east and the two west, and between and all between. He is creator of all creations. Jesus Christ, our Christ Jesus, I sent the creator of nothing. I want to say Jesus Christ isn't the creator of nothing and can't help you against Almighty Allah, God himself. This goes on for a while, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. It goes on for a while. As I said, I've asked him to call in because I just don't understand exactly what his point is, and I'm hoping he keeps his word. He said he would call, but we're 9 minutes in and he hasn't called yet. So, in the meantime, let's move on. They were talking, I was listening to some of the broadcasts earlier, and they were talking about the violence in Boston and the different forces that were aligned and arrayed to, shall we say, make sure that a certain level of violence is necessary. And I as Pastor Wall have to be very careful in what I say, because I do have a history with some of the more dangerous entities within the Boston history. So I have to be very mindful and very careful of how I talk about that particular phase of my life. Suffice to say that when you are in business, you meet a lot of people, and you're not, because your goal is to sell things or install things, you're not interested in how they make their money. You just want to make sure that you are you're paid for your service, and the goal is not to get seduced into a life that's not really you. Having said that, you have to be very mindful of who you're working for and where you are. So it was an interesting time in my life, and I learned that there were many forces at work in Boston. Boston doesn't know how close it came to a complete and total destruction of society as Boston knows it. Just say this. Imagine it's the 90s and all of the street gangs united. If you've ever seen that scene in The Warriors, the opening sequence in The Warriors, which is I still think one of the better movies ever made, it is a movie you could not make in today's world, but I don't know. Did you see that movie, producer, The Warriors? Okay, yeah. You're such a good person. I feel like there are times when I feel like the worst sinner on the face of the planet talking to you, because you have not let some of this stuff get into your brain and into your psyche. And huh?
Can I say?
Yeah, it's just, oh my goodness. I mean, I felt like a troglodyte because I watched a movie called Drag Me to Hell, and I really didn't watch it. It was on in my brother's house, and he was sitting there watching it. And I looked at the scene, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is what some people think concerning the afterlife. Like, there's a pit of fire underneath us at all times, and if we don't do right, it's going to open up and swallow us in. That's just, I mean, that's Hollywood. And it just isn't the case. It's just a flat-out lie. But it sells movies, obviously, and it gets people talking about it, obviously, because it didn't win any Academy Awards that I knew of. But anyway, so I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. The Warriors. Yeah. The Warriors come out to play, yay! Now, people who saw that movie understand that what I just said. You don't get the reference for that, but they do. But in that movie, in the opening sequence, you have Cyrus, and Cyrus is the leader of the largest gang, quote unquote, called the Riffs, and they are heavily they're all black. They wear black. And Cyrus was acting in a messianic figure. He called all the gangs together in a park. I guess it would be New York, so there would have to be the great, what is Madison? There's a park in New York, the Great Park.
Madison Square Park.
It is Madison Square Park, yeah. So all of the gangs in the city, you have to send 7 representatives to the gang to this meeting. So the whole Madison Park is filled with all these gangs, and Cyrus rises up to this platform. They built a platform. I don't know how they did that without permits, but they're gangs, so permits are probably not on their register. And he says, can you count, suckers? The whole world is yours if you can count. And what he's talking about is that if you look at the park, it's completely filled with all these gang members. And if they came together, they could rule New York easily. Nothing could happen if we didn't allow it. And it's all yours if you can count. In other words, if you could drop your petty grievances with this group, because he enumerates the fact that all of these different gangs are together and nobody is wasting nobody. So that in and of itself is a miracle. And they're all saying if you just join, if you believe the vision, why I'm bringing this all up is that Boston came very close to that. Because there was a meeting, I can't say when and I won't say where, but there was a meeting of most of the prominent gangs in the Boston area. And the request was, if you squash all your beefs and unite under me, I'll make sure you have everything you want and we'll rule this city of Boston. Now that in and of itself is a scary thought. But what's scarier is that it came very close to happening. Because, excuse me. Oh boy. It's a, yeah. It came very close to happening. And we have to, excuse me. You have to understand the fragile nature of Boston. 1,000 different gangs coming together. All, excuse me. All, thank you. Yeah. This will do for a start. Live TV. It's interesting because I usually don't have sneezing fits this far in, but I guess I'm having one now. The whole concept of there are, that's perfect, thank you, that there are forces at work that we don't know. And at any point in time, even if you're telling the story, you don't have the whole story. Even if you're living the story, you don't have the whole story. Throw one of those antiseptics over to me, please. Thank you. And it was a situation I recounted in the Bible where the same thing happened with Jacob and his brother, where they were at each other's throats because of a stolen article, and both of them were completely right in their own minds concerning their position. They didn't know that, yes, the article was stolen, and yes, the person that stole it was part of Jacob's group, but this fact was hidden. So you have two people staring at each other going, if you read the account in the book of Genesis, you'd see exactly what I'm talking about. You don't always know the whole story, I guess is what I'm saying. And having spent some time dealing with law enforcement, I learned really quickly that you don't get the whole story ever when you listen to the news. It's almost whatever you're listening to may have a kernel of truth in it, but you really don't understand the forces, I guess the dark forces that are in operation behind it. And you would do well to not make any judgments, I guess, until you have the whole story. So Boston has always been an interesting place to live, especially when it comes to the two worlds of Boston, the daytime world and the nighttime world. I remember when the combat zone was in full swing, there were different, I'll say, entities from different parts of the city, of the country, that would drive to Boston. They'd leave Thursday, drive, it's a 12-hour drive, so if you leave Thursday morning, you're there by Thursday night. The earlier you leave, the easier it is to get here. And get a motel room for the weekend, and then hit the streets of the combat zone looking for as many victims as they can to either rob, trick, just prostitutes, con artists, just whatever scam that they could run to get the money from the people. And they would literally do this, and they would stay Friday. They would come out Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, and then obviously checkout time is Monday at noon, so then it would leave and they would head back. And I know of at least one group that did that on a regular basis. They would put as many hookers in the car that they could, male and female, and they would drive up, as I said, and they would work the streets of the combat zone for the weekend. So there's always a lot of stuff going on that you don't know in the background, and you don't really need to know some of it because it's just not uplifting. So I'm going to guess that this person who's supposed to call in is not going to call in. He may still call in, but at this point in time, I think one of the things that people should know is that when they make a commitment to do something, their credibility is on the line. And everything that they say, everything they've said is gauged by their credibility, whether they keep their word or not. I know that there are people in the world that would tell you I'm the worst person on the planet because I didn't keep my word to them on either major things or little things. And it's just, you just got to keep your word. That's all you really have. So we still have a little bit of time. I was hoping that he would keep his word and call in at 8 o'clock, as he said, but he hasn't called in yet. I'm going to give him, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but we'll see what happens towards the end of the program. So you almost never really know the whole story of the nefarious world. So everybody has their take, everybody has their understanding of it, and even the people who are in it don't really get the whole picture. That's one of the tenets of running any type of organization. Not everybody needs to know everything. The person who is the president of Ford Motor Company isn't going to tell a line worker everything, because the line worker doesn't need to know it. He needs to show up at his job at his time, do his job, and go home. And he expects for the higher ups to make sure his money is there when it's time to give it to him. So it's the same thing in the gang world. It's the same thing in the police. It's the same. Everybody has their particular axe to grind, and you would not believe how easy it is to get charged for obstruction of justice. Yours truly was almost charged was investigated for obstruction of justice in a particular incident. So, and saying that, you don't have anything to hide is a good strategy. If you don't have anything to hide, you don't have anything to hide. But it's amazing what they can twist if they want to get you. So you have to be mindful of these things. So that's why it's always best just to live a perfect life in Christ as close as you can, so you don't have to worry about all this underworld stuff. Because ultimately it's just going to break down to, are you saved or are you not saved? We know that nobody gets out of this world alive. We know that at the end there will be a reckoning, there'll be a judgment, and God is not. Christ is as he returns as a judge. He is not going to. He's going to understand your philosophies. He's going to understand your passions and all your stuff you've done, and it's all going to come down to, well, did you acknowledge who I was? And if you didn't acknowledge who he was, then how can he acknowledge you before his Father? It's just that simple. So we'll see what happens at that time. I know what will happen. I believe that I know what will happen. And that's pretty much all anybody can say, is that they believe that they know what the truth is, and everybody has their own truth. The Carol DeMady story really shined a very bad light on Boston. The higher-ups, the hierarchies, that's Charles Stewart is the reference that I'm using. It shined a really bad light on, the fact that this Caucasian gentleman from the suburbs killed his wife and blamed it on a black guy. Was it one black guy or several? It was one, yeah. And his description of the black guy was so vague that all of the police the city of Boston just became a war, not a war zone, but a gulag or and such, where every young black man walking the street was now suspect of killing this white woman. And Boston, not that Boston needs any more racial tension, this just poured gasoline onto an already burning fire. And for a whole summer, up until the point where Charles, quote unquote, jumped from the bridge, there was still people saying that even after he had done that, there were still people saying, well, that's not really what happened. And it was just a nightmare in Boston. If you were black and young and walking the street, you were a suspect. So, and then there are even those out there that say Charles did not jump. Charles was helped over the bridge, shall we say. So I have no proof of any of that. So whether it happened or didn't happen, all we know is that Charles died. And when Charles died, it was very clear that he was the one that had orchestrated this whole thing. And rather than face the justice of what he had wrought, or as ultimate punishment for killing the wrong person's daughter, he was either killed or he killed himself. So either one of those two are true, or maybe even a little of both. He couldn't face what he had done, or somebody couldn't let him live for what he had done. And the end result is that when he died, the nonsense, shall we say, stopped. There are those out there that said that crime went down during that period of time in the Boston area. I've asked several people who claim to know, was there a significant drop in street crime? And the answer is yes, there was. But at what cost? I think it was I hope it was Ben Franklin that said anybody who gives up freedom for liberty deserves neither. So you can't have a situation. You're not free if you can't be free. And to say we're gonna, it's just no. You can't assume that young black people are the enemy. You can't do it. Not and have a real society, and not just white people being afraid of young black people, but black people being afraid of young black people or black people in general. You can't have a society like that. Okay, well, let's see here. Where are we at with this? It's 8:30. He has not called, and let me see if he's texted. Let me see if he has texted me to see if there's anything going on here. And this person has spent from last Wednesday all the way up to this morning. Happy Wednesday. I said I would call and listen. The time for me to speak is after Ramadan is over. Okay, well, I'm just reading his text message. He texted me at 7:28. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to say this now then, because I have been listening to you and I've talked with you for a week. I've read most of your posts. I don't understand a great deal of what I've read. I said you would call, but you haven't called. And listen, the time for me to speak is after Ramadan is over. No, that is not what you agreed on. That's not what you said. Your agreement, I'm looking at it right here, was appointment confirmed, view details, export to calendar. I asked you if you were to call in. You said you would call in, and you have not done that. So there's still time for you to do that, to call in and to not make. If you're going to be a messenger for Allah, then you have to keep your word. Period. I don't know how Ramadan can affect, if you're truly the person you say you are, and if the message that you have is truly valid and that people need to hear, and that all Christians are worshiping the wrong God. We don't understand who Jesus is. There are 3 Jesuses, and we don't understand any of them. If you are truly that person that has that message, I'm not sure what Ramadan has to do with. It would seem to me that the time to spread that message would be now. We have a national audience. I read one of your posts this morning, and as I said, when I read it, I don't quite understand what you're saying, so I can't do it justice. But I will say this: you said you would call in, and you were supposed to call in at 8:00. Okay, I get it. Things happen. But to say now that you're not going to speak until after Ramadan, that is, at that point, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll be quite honest with you, because you didn't keep your word. And if you are who you say you are, I've been reading and listening to your posts now. You've posted on my church page for a week. I've got text after text after text, all in caps, of what you have to say. And if you do not keep your word, it is all meaningless. It is all meaningless. I'm just being point blank with you. I'm not allowed to not keep my word. As you know, I'm a pastor of a church. And if I tell these people something, I have to stand by what I tell them. Otherwise, I'm not pastor. I can't tell people to do stuff they won't do, they don't want to do. And if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I have to be there, period. Because I've said it, and if I want them to listen to me when I'm talking about the nature of Christ, I have to model that as much as I possibly can. And you have to model what you're saying. All that talk you did all week, all these text messages, all this stuff that you have sent me, is going to mean absolutely nothing if you do not keep your word and call in. And at that point, no, after Ramadan, I get it. I don't really know the significance of Ramadan and you spreading the word. I don't know how that would be an issue. I could be wrong about that, but I've asked certain people to listen in the background to what you have to say, because they have different points of view, and in other words, I gave you the opportunity to spread your message and to teach those of us who may be wrong. I specifically asked you, if I'm not teaching the right message, then please show me where I'm wrong, because as a pastor, I have to be sure that what I'm doing is the will of God and not the will of Dan. So you're held to the same standard when you put yourself out there as a messenger. So, okay, moving on. I have one final thing to say, but I won't say that until we get to the end of the broadcast. So where were we? We're just kind of wandering around right now because my plans for today kind of fell apart. I want to give a shout out to my sister Lauren, Sweet Lamb. If you get a chance to, she's got a program on Boston Praise Radio. Do you know what it's called?
Let Your Light Shine.
Let Your Light Shine. Thank you. It is a phenomenal program. I watched it last week. She had a a preacher, a female pastor on, and it was just so intelligent. It was such a good interview. And then they had groups, and she's going to be promoting different genre of music, and you've really just it was a really good show. I was able to, it wasn't what I do, and it wasn't what everybody else does, and she did it so fine and so well. I don't often do this, but you have got to listen to her program. It's called Let Your Light Shine, and you just, Boston Praise Radio, you're able to get on and see. If you go on to Boston Praise Radio, you can see when she's going to be broadcasting, and it's a great program, and I highly recommend that you listen to it. So anyway, moving on. And this is interesting because I'm one of those people that will talk to anybody about anything at any time. And one of the things I learned is that you have to be willing to step out of your own comfort zone to hear and understand the differences in the world. Imagine in the first century when people of the way were talking about this miracle baby, and that in and of itself, that not only is this a miracle baby, but he does miracles, and he heals people, and he binds spirits, and if that's not enough, he's actually able to call people from the dead. And don't get me wrong, there were sorcerers and they were witches and magicians that could do a lot of the same stuff, but only to a point. It's just like the enemy has power, but only to a point. And really, the only power the enemy has in your life is that which you give to him. If you don't want the enemy to have rule over your life, then stop giving it to him. Stop telling him where he can attack you. It was pointed out to me that after the confirmation from God, where Jesus is baptized, the voice from heaven says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." And some verse and some report that "hear him" is part of that statement as well. It's not in all of the books. It's not in all the accounts. But hear him. This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased, but hear him. And then the Spirit of God descending upon Christ like a dove is a picture right there of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost in evidence. So, having said that, now we have a situation where this person is anointed, this person has been confirmed, and he is beginning to preach, and he's beginning to teach, and he's teaching and preaching a gospel that's never been heard of. When you start with love your enemies and do good to those who despitefully use you, that's a different message altogether, because let's face it, we're human. We're human. So most of the time I allow people to lie to me at least once. And according to the Bible, we have to let people lie to us even more. 7 times 70. No, that's not 490 times, people. It means that we are to leave ourselves in a position where we can be infinitely used. But anyway, as I started to say, so Jesus, after that literal mountaintop experience, goes off into the wilderness. He's drawn to the wilderness. He's pushed to the wilderness. He goes to the wilderness and he stays there 40 days and 40 nights fasting and praying. That means that he's not eating anything. That means he has no fellowship with anybody. It's 40 days and 40 nights of complete and total isolation. and the enemy knows where he is. The enemy is right, is ever present, but the enemy does not do anything until Jesus says, I'm waiting for you scholars out there to yell what he says. He says, I'm hungry. And as soon as he says, I'm hungry, bing, like a scene from Bewitched. She wiggles her nose and the event is there. As soon as she says, I'm hungry, there's Satan. And he starts with the bread. Then he says, throw yourself down and you won't be harmed. And then he says, I'll give you everything if you just worship me. The three ways that Satan comes at you: lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. It's his whole routine. That's all he ever does. That's his whole routine. He's a one-trick pony with 3 acts, and it's all, as I said, though, he plays those 3 acts, those 3 chords so masterfully, you think it's a symphony. It's not. It's one of those 3. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, or pride of life. Sometimes it is all of them at the same time. Sometimes it's just one of them at a time. It just depends on what he thinks he can do and how he thinks he can do it and who he's up against. Being up against Christ, he was going to lose, but he had to give it his best shot. You've seen that before. We see that in life. There are football teams out there that everybody knows are going to get beaten, but they still show up and they still line up and they still hit the field and they still go out and do. And surprise, surprise, every once in a while those teams win. And it surprises everybody, starting with them. So, the air in here is a little different. So, I believe that I want to thank Brother Jamal. If he stayed on and listened, I was hoping that he would hear this gentleman and be able to give me some insight, because there's certain things that I confess that I don't understand when it comes to different other thought processes. What time is it? 43. Okay, we got some time. So his name is, I'll just call him, because I can't pronounce his first name, I'll just call him Brother Ali. Ali. He will not be invited back. You will not hear from him. This was his shot. When you do not keep your word, especially when it comes to telling me and every Christian that we're wrong and that we don't understand the true nature of Christ, and I give you an opportunity to come on and explain where we've got it wrong with no hidden agendas. Gave you a chance to speak what you said, that you've been called to be a messenger, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to be that, and you don't take advantage of it for whatever reason. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. And he will not be allowed on, and as of today, he will be blocked. He will no longer have access to. I don't want to hear from him again. This was his chance, his opportunity. So, Brother Jamal, if you stayed on and listened, waiting to hear something, so did I. I thank you for that. But the evidence of what he had to say is all encompassed in the fact that he did not keep his word. So, whatever concepts he has, whatever understanding he has, to me, is all filtered to the fact that he didn't keep his word. So there's no reason to listen to him. I will be deleting all of his posts and blocking him, so he'll have no more access to our channel. All right, moving on. Oh boy, what we got going on? just kind of drifting through today. I should probably call Mom and see if she's okay, because she didn't call in, and usually that means that she she had a rough night and she didn't wake up in time. That's usually what happens. Because sometimes she calls me and says, "I just woke up," and it's like 9:05. Yeah. So Let's see here. Somebody. Okay. I'm going to keep my brother Benji in prayer. He's up in Cleveland having a biopsy on his kidney. So that's a serious enough thing. Oh, these human bodies, man. When you're young, you're bulletproof, and when you're old, you're a bullet magnet. Well, basically everything that you did just comes back at you. That's pretty much what that's all about. I'm trying to get to recent to see if oh, there she is. Let me give her a call. And while the phone is ringing in the background, I just want to say that we will allow difference of opinions. We will allow people who want to educate us or are in our beliefs and in what they say, what they do. But I will not tolerate, and I cannot tolerate people not keeping their word. I just can't do it, especially when it comes to the Word of God. If you claim to have a message from God, the time to show that or the time to do that is when you're given the opportunity to speak. All of the prophets in the New Testament, excuse me, starting with Christ himself, when he was given the opportunity to speak, he spoke. And sometimes he spoke the loudest when he didn't say anything. And then there were times when he actually did speak, and that was significant as well. But when you have the opportunity to present your cause and you don't take it, it either means that you don't believe in your cause, or you know that your cause will not stand the light of day. Your logic, your reason cannot be challenged. So that's one of the reasons when I don't know something, I'm trying to learn to keep my mouth shut when I don't know something, because I've been known to bluff on occasion. As a friend of mine say, you got to be careful when you're bluffing, because let's see. There's a great line in a song: "Those black cards can make you money, so you hide them when you're able. In the land of milk and honey, you must put them on the table." So eventually, all bluffs get called. So anyway, there we go. I'm really disappointed though, because I thought that he was somebody, and apparently he's not. I'll be done with it. I'll be done with it. I know it's like, move on, Dan. You've said it. You've done everything you could, and it just bothers me. I'm human. I'm not the great broadcaster I want to be just yet. I'm not Bruce Wall. Let's see if that gets a rise out of him. It is. Hopefully next week we'll have a guest that will actually show up, and next week is the third. Was today the third, or is next week the third Wednesday? I have to look at my calendar. I think this is the third Wednesday. Yeah. So let me give a couple of people a call, see if we can have them in studio for next week. The 20th of May, the Bullock brothers are coming to Framingham for a great day of ministry. The Bullock brothers in Framingham, Mass. The Bullock brothers, sons of the Bullock brothers, Emmanuel, I believe, will be there as well, and I think Legacy is going to be there too. I'm trying to see if I can see what they sent me here. But you definitely want to be there. 2:00 Saturday. We're going to start pretty much on time, and we're going to do it early. on a Saturday so people will be able to get to and don't have any excuse not to show up the next day. Oh, I was so tired at the concert, I just couldn't make it to church Sunday. No. That's not. We're doing our part. You have to do yours. So the concert starts at 2:00. There is no admission. There's no admission. It's the house of God, and we don't believe in charging people to come in. So there's that. And as near as I can tell, there will be no raffles. I'm not one of those ones that does raffles either. So, and well, that's just because I don't gamble. So at least I don't gamble in the way the other people gamble. I gamble in TVs back in the day. You know what? I have never picked up a flat screen TV off the street that's worth keeping. Not one. So I stopped picking them up because for the first time that people were putting them out, I started picking them up and testing them, and no, there's never been one. So I don't pick them up anymore. So I gamble in cars. I'll buy a car every now and again just to put it together and to sell it. So that's where I gamble. But we should do something on this new lottery thing going on, the DraftKings coming to Boston. We should probably talk about that at some point. I know a brother that I know has a very powerful ministry, and he had hit he'd hit on some lottery tickets, and people were coming after him. How can you be a man of God and play the lottery? And I was like, okay, I'm not sure I'm not sure what God has to say about that. Well, how come you're not sure? Well, I am sure about what God has to say about that. I'm just not sure what everybody else is. 2 minutes. Oh my goodness, we got through another one. So, Mr. Jolie, Ali, you have blown it. Whatever your message is or was is a moot point to me. Do me the favor of not contacting me anymore. There's nothing you have to say I want to hear because you didn't keep your word. It's literally just that simple. Don't forget, all of a sudden, the breathing and everything else has gone down the tubes. Let's not forget that April 7th, Good Friday, the church will be having the retelling of the 7 last words in public. If you are a pastor or if you're a preacher and we wish to take one of the words, there's still 3-4 words open. It's 7 preachers, 7 minutes, 7 last words. And it's going to happen in the public square of Framingham, downtown Framingham. So that means right on the sidewalk. So once again, be mindful that you are going to be out in the public. And that's pretty much it. It's been an interesting broadcast. I felt like a little boat just kind of drifting through the waters today. It just kind of drifting through it. So we picked up on and we dealt with stuff. Keep my mother in prayer. Keep my brother in prayer. Keep Pastor Hobbs in prayer. He's doing some really phenomenal work with the returning citizens. I haven't talked about that in a while. And with the last 30 seconds, I'll talk about, go ahead, tell us what you're doing. No, I'm not doing that to him. But he's doing some phenomenal work with returning citizens. They need help too. Otherwise, they'll be right back. So and he has a passion for that. So, hey, God, your gifts will make room for you. They kept telling me that when I was younger because I kept trying to get myself in all these different places. Dan, your gifts will make room. Dan, your gifts will make room. So they're right. Your gifts do make room for you. So he's got a ministry. I am Pastor Dan Walker. Somewhat disappointed that I didn't get our brother to call in and to defend his position and to tell us, all of us Christians, where we're wrong and how we should be changing our lives in the whole bit. I'm sorry about that, people. I thought that would have been good for us to hear because he may have had something that needed to be said. But apparently God, in these situations, God always knows what he's doing, and we bow to his will. So He wasn't given the time praise for 30 seconds? Oh, okay, cool. It's Pastor Dan Walker, privileged to pastor the New Bethel Baptist Church in Framingham, Mass. Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Hear me out, baby, hear me out. The devil don't want you to hear me. Don't want you to hear me. The devil don't want you to hear me. Don't want you to hear me. The devil don't want me to tell you that God is a God of love, a God of mercy.